Welcome to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast, a place where backcountry warriors can share their stories of grit, service, healing, and wilderness adventures. I'm your host, Tom Walton, Marine Corps veteran, full-time cop, and aspiring hunting and fishing guide. Join me and others as we journey from the hood to the woods in pursuit of freedom in the outdoors. All right, welcome to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Tom Walton. Just if you guys actually watch the podcast, you'll notice my background's different. Kind of flying off the cuff today just because I am still recovering from back surgery, which if you guys paid attention to any of the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors social media, I've talked about a little bit, but had back surgery, so I'm sitting on the couch, not in my normal recording place, so background audio might be a little bit off, so I apologize for any of that stuff, especially any audio quality changes that might result from this, but forgive me. Back surgery is just easier to sit here on the couch with some ice on my back while I record this because I don't want to miss a week and not have content for you all. But I'm really excited to do this episode today. It's long overdue. Today I'm joined by a really good friend of mine, Chris Jones. Chris Jones and I know each other through our professional careers. Mine, as most of you guys know, is in law enforcement on a local SWAT team. And that's where I met Chris. He works for the Spokane County Fire District 9 as a Lieutenant Paramedic, and we met through, back then it was kind of just whoever could show up, but he has been instrumental in the founding of our local rescue task force and tactical emergency medics, TEMS, a lot of people call it TEMS, for any of you guys that are listening that know what I'm talking about. So that's how we met. We met through our capacity in the tactical world here in local law enforcement and fire service. But moving on, Chris is also the regional chair with the Spokane County Committee for the Rescue Task Force. Essentially, that is a lot that has to do with fire and law enforcement integration to active shooter program response at schools and stuff like that. He has developed and driven a lot of regional best practices for mass casualty response. Specialized rescue that he's done has helped start the Rapid Extraction Module Support Program. He's going to get into all of that stuff, performing technical rope rescue and medical extractions in remote wilderness environments. He's a second-generation firefighter, continuing a family legacy following his father and uncle's service with the city of Spokane. He's an entrepreneur and co-founder of Response Ready Medical, which partners with civilian schools and churches to provide life-saving tools and training for critical minutes before first responders arrive. He is a passionate advocate for self-rescue and preventative preparedness for hunters, backpackers, and everyday citizens. Guys, excuse me if I'm stumbling. I'm not on the opioids anymore, but I feel like I'm having some residual effects of it today. So listeners, I apologize. I hope you stick with it. But yeah, Chris is a Division I athlete from college. He played Division I football at the University of Idaho, transferred to the Washington State University, and has a diverse EMS experience, emergency medicine, trained in high volume areas such as Phoenix and Spokane, ranging from rural long distance transports to busy interstate trauma. He is a passionate elk hunter and outdoorsman, loves fly fishing, loves hanging out in northern and central Idaho, and he uses his time in the outdoors to maintain peak performance and mental health in his high stress profession. So that was a lot, but that's just because the dude is awesome. So Chris, without further ado, let's just let the listeners hear from you, man. Thanks for joining me on the show today.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
I was just going to say, just didn't know if you want to kind of start with my background and where I got into all this. Yeah, just out of high school, we talked about a little bit earlier before we started this, kind of defining success. So for me, I'm ADD, kind of all or nothing when I take on projects. So back then, that was football, and that was kind of my direction, kind of my identity, some good and bad with that. When that was over in college, I kind of had that. I think we all as men kind of have that missing piece of kind of what's next, where do I want to put that passion and that time? Just always kind of grew up around the fire service, seeing my dad and uncle enjoy it, visiting my dad at the fire stations. I was always on the back burner. And then I moved down to Phoenix and started really actually doing an EMT course. I didn't really love school. got pretty good grades, but just always was bored in school, right? I'm not the type to sit through lectures, very hands-on. So when I did my first EMT course, I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like, get to sit through lecture, get to practice skills. Then the next day I'm at a hospital, I'm actually doing that thing. Next week I'm going sitting through lecture, reading about it at home. Next week I'm actually doing it on the ambulance. So just finally that job that was suited for me, where it's like I get some knowledge, some skills, some tools, and then I actually get to go use them, right? It's not write an English paper, take a math course. So just was drawn to that right away, that service too, and just working in the community and just that the chaos part of our job that we all know about. And then in the summers, started doing wildland firefighting in between playing football, and just really kind of phased out of that. Like, I'm not really the type that's an academic. College really isn't my thing. This is definitely my path and what I want to do. And at the time, I didn't really know a lot of what I'm doing experience wise, professionally would really translate into kind of what we do now as a business. So it's really cool just to cut my teeth, as a brand new wildland firefighter, working off of engines, getting formed up as hand crews down in California, working on all over the country on a national strike team. Went from more the fire side to the medical side. So did that line medic position. So more of a single resource, get put all over the place, working with, shot crews, engine crews, at a drop point pretty close to town, or all the way out to a super remote area where we have to actually cut out a landing zone, work with heliTAC, work with, helo resources to fly a patient out. So just a lot of cool experience. I'm in the backcountry treating patients, being with patients for a long period of time. Is kind of working in that environment. So, and then with Fire District 9, it's pretty new concept, but you mentioned the REMS module. I'm currently on our tech rescue program. I'm just a team member for that team. I'm not a lead, but we do confined space, rope rescue, building collapse, all the different disciplines basically besides water rescue, and we don't do hazmat. But we combined UTV with rope rescue capabilities and have that all strapped on so we can actually drive that UTV, kind of like our line medic concept. But now there's a team of 4, at least 1 or 2 paramedics, a couple tech rescue members, and we can drive that to remote areas. We can either strap them on a Stokes to the back of that UTV module, or we have a Stokes on a wheel, looks like a little bike tire attached to the bottom of the Stokes basket. And we've had to hike them out on a single track trail, for a couple miles, and they're hoist capable. So we've also had to just fly them out with a helicopter. So I love that kind of chaotic, uncomfortable situations of somebody getting hurt in a bad spot. They're pretty far out of town, pretty far away. And, what tools are we going to use? How are we going to problem solve to get that person out of that bad spot or that bad area, right? So just really, really cool to kind of get that experience and start in that world. So
awesome, man. Yeah. And one of the things that was kind of listed off when I was talking in your bio that you sent me is that you're passionate advocate, for being prepared and, empowering essentially community members, whether it's at churches, schools, in the backcountry. Just where does that passion come from? Where does it go from you're serving and doing the service of helping people to you wanted to start preparing people to help themselves?
Yeah, I think with our job, I think we all feel this way, whether you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're a firefighter, you're a cop. I feel like our job's so reactionary, right? Like this bad thing happens, this bad event happens. I can train my paramedics, my other guys around me. We can work with the cops. It's all great, but we're always there after that bad event happens. We're always there 3 to 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, if you're in the backcountry, a few hours or days later, right? So for me, I was like, man, there's so much more value in taking your everyday person and teaching them just some very basic, resiliency skills of, that person's in a car wreck. You're either in the car or you pull up and you stop to help them, or the active shooter in the school, or your buddy gets hurt out while you're hunting. It's like, that's great. You want to call 911. But I think we've just gotten so conditioned and soft, honestly, of just thinking help's always there. But really, is it? I mean, even if you're in the middle of town, and there's a car wreck right in front of you, or that person goes into cardiac arrest, what do you do for those first 3 to 5 minutes before there's help? Or in backcountry, again, the first couple hours or days before there's help. So I'm just super passionate about that, of giving people those skills and the ability, you talk about the active shooter world, helping churches and schools and businesses, making themselves a harder target, more resilient, even on the preventative side, right? Like, what is your policy for lockdowns? Do you have security cameras? Are you denying entry to one entry point throughout the day for mass or for, school to start. Just all those little practices just make yourself more of a deterrent. So I really appreciate the more of the preventative side, and then help give everyday civilians the tools to, prolong life, to survive, to buy us time. I just caught a class for a church yesterday, and I'll just use the cardiac arrest reference. When we go on a call, I walk in and somebody's already doing, it's a witnessed arrest, meaning somebody saw that person go down. They're doing really good compressions. If I walk in the door and I see that, like, I light up and like, hey man, I have a great chance of getting that person high chance of survival. It's about 80% greater chance for them to survive that event, versus I walk in the door and, the poor wife wasn't strong enough to pull him off the bed or get him out of the recliner. No CPR is happening. We're still going to do everything we can to help that person. But you just know their survival chances go down significantly without good CPR in the beginning. That little, reference goes to everything. Stop the bleed. Civilians know how to put tourniquets on. They have tourniquets readily available, in our wall mounts, in the classrooms, next to the AED at the church. So just giving those people the tools, like, how do I actually do this stuff? How do I have the right mindset to be confident to do it? And then the tools, the actual equipment itself, readily available. Just super passionate about that. And I think, you can appreciate that too. And you show up to a scene and a citizen's already kind of solved their problem or set a good stage for us to kind of take over that scene. It's definitely makes our job a lot easier and just a better outcome for our patients.
Absolutely. And I'm going to talk about mindset, or want to talk about mindset. But first, we're going to take a short break. Hey, everybody. I just want to take a quick break to thank you for listening to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast. And to thank you today, I want to offer you a discount at 360 Sportsman. Head over to sportsman.org now and use promo code PF15. That is PF15 to get 15% off your subscription to any of their master classes listed on the website. You can learn anything over there to improve your skills at hunting, fishing, trapping, snowmobiling. There's going to be first aid classes up there. They've got all kinds of stuff. There's even a how to build a house class coming. So anything you want to learn related to the outdoors or just making yourself a more knowledgeable human being, head over to 360sportsman.org. Use promo code PF to get 15% off any of their master classes. Want to thank you for listening to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast, and we'll get back to the show. Welcome back to the show, folks. So moving on, Chris, we're talking about the why behind your passion for preparing citizens and folks that aren't first responders to be able to help themselves in crisis emergency situations, and you mentioned mindset. And I just think that that's something, whether it's in the backcountry or just in your everyday life, man, like, people lack the mindset. And I understand why. Who wants to think of bad things happening? And I'm talking about bad things like, who wants to be sitting in their church and thinking about somebody coming through the door that's going to start shooting and killing innocent people around you, or maybe you and your family? Who wants to think about their kid's school being shot up by a crazy, active shooter? Who wants to think about being at a restaurant when somebody goes into cardiac arrest? Who wants to think of these horrible things? Nobody, right? I don't even like thinking about them, but unfortunately I do, right? Or, translating it to the backcountry, who wants to think about, a son accidentally shooting their father in the leg, with a high power rifle, which, by the way, just happened in Idaho this year to somebody I knew. These things, we don't want to think about them, but there's realities in life that there's evil exist and bad things happen, and there's bad actors out there, and then just life happens, right? There are evil people that are going to come and try to kill folks, right? And maybe you'll go your whole life and never be involved in one of those incidents. Maybe it's going to happen at your church. It's definitely been proven it happens everywhere in the country, small town, big cities. It doesn't matter. And then when it comes to the backcountry, man, I mean, so many things can go wrong, dude. Like, you and I were co-teaching that class to the snowmobilers, right? And something that you and I hadn't thought about, but what was hot on their mind was getting stuck in the face or the chest by a tree limb, right? Getting impaled is a real possibility if you're a backcountry snowmobiler. So, in a hunting setting, man, we got guns, we got sharp objects, bows with arrows, with broadheads. I mean, things can happen in a split second. Everything's going good, and the next thing you know, you're in a crisis when you weren't seeing it at all. And my point to that is, man, I don't expect people to walk around thinking about it every day like a cop or a fireman does. I don't enjoy when I go to church and and that stuff. I'm always like constantly thinking about what I'm gonna do when the bad guy comes through the door with a gun, like that distracts from the service, and I try to turn it off. But it is a necessary thing to at least have a plan, right? I mean, I mean, when we teach classes we just, Sam and I, folks don't know Sam is just a coworker. I won't give his last name on the air because he's super high speed, but
That's super
at least
cool.
he, at
Way too
least he,
cool for
at least
us.
he thinks he is. But he and I were just teaching at one of our local colleges, and tell these folks like, hey, I don't want you to think about it 24/7, but I want you to think about it at least once or twice so that when it happens, you have a plan. And I think having a plan and equipment is really what's going to save your life. Am I right on that?
Yeah, and like one of the courses, we haven't really gotten a response ready yet, but one of the ones, Sam and more you and some of our law enforcement instructors teaches, that active threat for civilians course of just kind of, I was telling somebody the other day, I've been doing this job for so long, and I know you have, and like most of the people I'm around are other firefighters and cops and military. It's like I'm so used to thinking it's just natural to sit in a certain spot when I get a coffee and just have that high alert, almost anxiety all the time. And like it's so funny you mentioned the church thing. Like literally today at church, like I can't turn off like thinking about, hey, I need to train my security, here this church better, and just, we should have a wall mount over here, and if this happens, and like, my wife, she always gets frustrated because I'm constantly like, all right, just remember, like, if something happens, like, go get the kids, go here and just get out of here. Like, I'm gonna go solve the problem, and go help with the threat, and just, having those little conversations, or hey, the text, hey, it's icy, I just went on 2 rollovers, like, just maybe if you don't have to leave the house today, don't, or just take that extra time, right? Like that's just unfortunately always wired into our brain. And when I teach any class though, I think it's super important. Somebody asked me last month at a course, like, man, you're just so calm. And like, you can tell when you teach and when you're leading these things that you just have this sense of calm about you. And how do I do that when I go on this call? And it's, or not call, sorry, just when that happens to them, right? And it's like, man, that's so hard to teach. I can't bottle that up and give you calmness and confidence, right? Like that just takes, unfortunately, the good and bad for us is that calm comes from that stress and that trauma and going through bad things multiple times and just kind of building up those, those calluses and working through those. And like we just have this hardened mindset, and there's days we have bad days, right? And it breaks us. But there's other days it just makes us ultra prepared for this kind of stuff.
Well, and
So my answer,
oh,
sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
Even like to the person that's asking, how can I remain calm? You know, in a situation where everything's falling apart and chaotic, whether it's an active shooter or you just had a serious horse accident in the backcountry or getting charged by a grizzly bear. How do I stay calm in that
Yep.
situation, man? Like, the way that you stay calm is that you've had a plan, right? And even though nothing's going to go exactly according to your plan, the fact that you've thought about it and you have some sort of action prepared in your mind is going to help you stay calm in that situation.
Yep. So like, because of those questions, like I'm a constant student. I try to be low ego. I think medicine needs to be low ego. We're learning constantly. I'm ever the student. I try to go to one big national course a year of people that are better than me and better experts than me. And I love that I always get to bring back something. So just that one basic question a few times come up in course. Now, every time I teach, especially backcountry, like you said, I almost have that. It might be kind of cheesy, like almost meditation, but just, hey, close your eyes at the church I was at yesterday. Like imagine, you hear gunfire on the other side of the church. And, this goes back to, I had a really good mentor track coach in high school at Meade High School. We had a track pyramid, and a couple of the things on that pyramid were visualization and positive self-talk. And I've used those my whole life. So I challenged everybody in the church yesterday, hey, just, close your eyes. That shooter walks in a different part of the building. You hear the gunfire. Like, are you that person that, takes a bunch of the, children ministry and barricades them away and gets them in that back room, or helps them get just away from the building? Or, hey, are you more that savage mentality, warrior, and you're going to go confront that person and, go help solve that problem? The time to figure that out, the best time to have that positive self-talk or visualization is probably not when it happens. So I don't like fear-based mindset. I don't like preaching fear. I take a lot of risk. I solo elk hunt, archery elk hunt by myself. But like you said, like be prepared, have a plan, put plan A, B, C in place, put trigger points, whether it's somebody, hey, if you don't hear from me by this time, or here's where I'm going to be, when I go hunting, I text my closest friend, my wife, and my dad. I drop a pin where I'm supposed to be at and kind of my time frames of why I'm going to be there. And I talk about that a lot, in our backcountry class. So just, have that positive self-talk ahead of time and just, decide, what are you, that person that's willing to step up? If you're not, that's totally fine. But when that bad thing happens, like that's not the time to find out you're not that person, that's willing to step up. I don't know if you're familiar with this. I always talk about kind of more the active shooter world, because that's kind of what I specialize in at work. I don't remember the incident, if it was a voter booth line or whatever, that guy pulled a pistol out, started shooting, and that older, I think 75-year-old gal just whacked the guy with his purse, just enough to kind of get him off his game, get him off his OODA loop. And, people are able to bum rush him. He only got a couple shots off. So I like using that scenario to just tell people, like, you don't have to be this big 240-pound linebacker to go solve the problem. Like, these people are not highly trained. We talk about these scenarios that we do, there's not 3 ex-Navy SEALs taking over a building and we got Overwatch. Like, typically it's one shooter. They're not super highly trained, and just making yourself in a harder target, a deterrent, barricading and fighting. Like, at this point, all the rules are out the window, like we saw in Vegas, right? It's animalistic, every man for themselves. And you got to kind of have that talk with yourself. Am I willing to step up? What am I going to do? And if not, like, unfortunately, you and your family might be in harm's way if you're not willing to step up and be that person. So,
yeah.
And also, I just think too, like, for me to sit here and say I've been a paramedic for 14 years and say I go in every call and I'm fine, like, that would be a lie. But I'd say anytime I do feel that stress, and I'm a newer officer, I've only been a lieutenant for a year, I have a saying and a little breathing thing I do every time I feel that way. And it's, hey, you're in this situation. You ain't getting out of it. People called you to come solve their problem. Take a deep breath. And being chaotic, getting spun up is not going to help anybody. Being calm is infectious. So just work through the problems, go back to your training. That's why being good and disciplined in training is important. But just taking that deep breath, recentering yourself, just visualization ahead of time of what you need to be doing, and falling back on your training is super important. So, like, regardless of what crappy situation I'm put in, even if maybe I am about to die, for some reason I'm in the backcountry or something at work, like, I would like to think I'd still go out calm and have my head about me before that happens.
Absolutely, man. And I want to circle more back to the backcountry medicine stuff for the listeners, give them a little value today. But before we do, man, just on this note we're talking about with mindset and staying calm. And I love what you said, like, don't think that we don't get scared, right? So I haven't talked a ton about my background. I don't even know if I've really interviewed a lot of other, like, first responders. So far, it's been like a lot of military guys, but, like, I definitely get scared, man. Whether I've been scared on patrol calls, I've been definitely scared as a SWAT guy. I can think of an incident that I think I could probably share, here locally, that happened a few years ago. And so for me, a few years ago would still be over 10 years into my career, right? Like, you would think a 10-year cop plus with over 8 years of experience on SWAT wouldn't get rattled, but it happens, man. Like, it totally happens. And, a couple of times I can think of, like, one in particular. More recently, we were on a hostage rescue, right? And this dad had barricaded in the upstairs bedroom with his kiddo. We knew he had access to guns, but we didn't know if he had a gun with him. We just knew he was up there. He was wanted for domestic violence assault charges. We couldn't leave. He couldn't stay there with his kid. And he was using his kid as leverage to either not go to jail or just get what he wanted, right? He was leveraging the situation and using his child as essentially a human shield. And when we ended up making entry in that house, and at the time I was the point guy, and what that means is that, like, I was the first one to go into the house, or the first one to make entry into some of the rooms. It's a big job, and not to toot my own horn, but it comes with a whole crap ton of stress, right? Because I'm making decisions that could affect the survivability for the child or my teammates. We get upstairs, we get position in front of the room where we think that the kid is likely at, and there's been fire alarms. Like, we had set off some flashbangs, broke windows in the bottom of the house, and so there was lots of loud noise. It caught the flashbangs, which is just For people who don't know, they don't explode. They do what's called deflagrate. They're not hand grenades. There's no fragmentation. They just a hot flash of light with a lot of noise and a little bit of smoke. Very relatively safe, less than lethal tool that we use as a distraction device. But they caused the smoke alarm to go off in the house. So there's a fire alarm going off. Like I said, broken windows and lots of noise outside, sirens chirping outside. And we never heard this kid who was suspected to be about 2 years old cry, scream, anything, right? And that right there, anybody that knows how easy it is to agitate a young child into a state of fear and crying, like that is significant. And everybody on the team was feeling that anxiety of, why isn't this kid making a peep? Is this kid already dead? Has he been smothered by his dad? Did his dad kill him and himself and the kid already? I mean, all these horrible things going through our heads. And when I'm standing in front of that last door with the plan is, we were up there, used all that noise to kind of get up there sneaky, right? So that he didn't know exactly where in the house we were. So everyone is silently clearing the rooms behind me. And I remember like counting down, kind of like, all right, they cleared that room. They cleared that room. All right, now it's just the bathroom. And if he's not in there, it's 100% that he's going to be in the room I'm in. Like every time they clear a room, I'm just like, the chances and the likelihood of me end up confronting this dude with this kid increase. And then they clear the bathroom, and now it's for sure like I am going to be going through the next door and the bad guy with the kid's going to be in there. And I didn't know what we were going to face, man. I didn't know if he had a dead kid and was going to shoot at us, if he had a live kid and he was going to shoot at us, if what. No. And I legitimately sat there in front of that door and I started having these overwhelming feelings of, I haven't been a good enough husband. I wish I could tell my wife I love her one more time and that I'm sorry for being a bad husband. All these really strong emotions, man. And you really, in that moment of fear and anxiety, just have to take deep breaths, man. Like, and that's my tactic, is breathe and then look at something in my environment to ground myself back to reality and slow my heart rate and slow my mind. And that's what I do. And that's what I did. And thank goodness, man, we did make an entry into that room. The dad was using his child as a human shield when we came in there, but thankfully he did not have a firearm on his person. I ended up wrestling the kid out of the dude's arms while my partners dealt with him appropriately. So that ended well, thank God. But that's just one of those moments, man, where if you don't think like a hardened or a seasoned SWAT guy, special forces guy, soldier, Marine, fireman doesn't get scared when shit hits the fan, like, man, there's moments that'll, make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. But those instincts, I think, are what keep us alive. That was a long story just to say, I agree with you, man. I get scared too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I love hearing those stories, and it just makes me think too. I think we talked offline a little bit. Like, I get a lot of crap at work of, I get called to cop, and I'm the guy that should have been a cop, wants to be a cop. And then our buddy Sam Turner's the cop that should have been a fireman. Well, that's probably every cop actually, but just I appreciate you guys and your community of dudes, and just I love the level of training and professionalism, and just I don't know. I always like being around your group of dudes, and I think it's part of it. Just I don't know, just one of my favorite things. I guess I don't know if I shared that we do the SWAT medic program too. You mentioned our TEMS program, but I love driving on an incident, whether it's 5 minutes away or an hour and a half to the Canadian border with you guys. I just love that we can all be chatting, camaraderie, talking about what we're about to do, and then you guys have a big thing where you talk about, say mindset, and we're talking about mindset. And I love it because everybody just stops what they're doing, dials in, focuses in, and just that level of, it just almost gives me chills, like that level of professionalism and like seeing a group of dudes like about to accomplish a single goal, like just all of a sudden everybody locks in and has that same focus. So it's just, I don't know. I always love that part of heading into a SWAT call. I'm just seeing everybody snap to and know it's game time now, and we need to be on our A game for the citizens that expect us to do that.
Yeah, man. It's funny, that's a moment that I don't always think about, but it happens every call out. And I know when, I'm sitting in the back of our Bearcat, which for the listeners that don't know, a Bearcat is just is an armored vehicle, right? It's an armored truck. And sitting in the back of the Bearcat as we're approaching a scene, I always think like sometimes, these call outs happen in the middle of the night and I'm kind of disgruntled. Like, I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but I mean, I'm a human, right? I'm kind of disgruntled, like, dang it, man. Like, I was sleeping really good. I really wish I didn't have to get out of bed right now. Like, maybe it's like 10 o'clock at night and I just got into a good deep sleep and all of a sudden that phone goes off and hey, there's an armed domestic violence suspect barricaded, or hey, this dude just shot at these cops way up by Canada, and we need you guys to go out there in the middle of the night and deal with it. And it's like, man, I just want to stay home, my nice warm bed. I don't want to go stand out in the cold, and freeze all night. Like, I just want to stay in bed. Can we put the call out on pause until maybe 10 a.m.? But that's not how life works, right? But then I get into the back of the Bearcat and we're rolling up on the scene. I instantly, like, that feeling of I don't want to go to this call out fades. And I'll tell you, like, in the beginning of my SWAT career, that feeling, I never had that feeling. I was like, yeah, call out, like, let's go 24/7. I don't care. But like after hundreds of call outs, it's like, dude, I just want to stay asleep right now. But that call that fades in that back of the Bearcat. And, a lot of times we might be kind of joking around and ha and high fiving. But dude, like you said, man, one of the guys started with one of our team leaders, start as every call out, dude, he would say, all right, boys, mindset. And then we do a little like fist bump thing in the back of the Bearcat. And that's the moment, man. That's the moment that locks us in. And it's that moment where that feeling of I don't want to be there fades away to there's nowhere else in the world I'd want to be, but with my brothers about to go solve whatever crisis that was so bad that patrol cops and all their resources couldn't solve. Right. So it's an incredible, powerful thing. I'm honored and humbled every time I get to go out and be a part of that. And it's killed me to be on night duty and not able to go do it for the last like 6 months, man. I haven't been able to join my brothers when they go on call outs. I just watch on the phone and hope that they can make it through safe. And they always do. So, but
now your biggest danger is getting a paper cut, right?
Exactly, man. And just on like the backcountry mindset side of things, man, I think it's just to come back to that. It's really critical for backcountry people, man. When I say backcountry people, I don't want to like just loop in, like just if you're a backcountry hunter or a backcountry angler, whatever, man. If you spend any time in the backcountry, whether it's backpacking, day trips up to some of our beautiful alpine lakes here in North Idaho and Washington, or whether snowmobiling, dirt biking, mountain biking, horseback riding, rafting, whatever it is that you do in the outdoor, it puts you away from emergency services. And not only does it put you away from emergency services, but there is always an inherent risk with the outdoors, right? You can slip and fall and twist an ankle. You can fall off the raft and get held under by a current and end up, drowning. You can fall off a raft or your boat and hit a rock and break a bone. You can fall off the horse and get impaled on a stick. You can trip and impale on it. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, let alone all the firearm safety stuff that comes with the hunting and all of that. I mean, just a slew of issues can happen. Getting caught in weather, hypothermia, you name it, man. The backcountry has inherent risk. And even though 99% of the time when we go into the backcountry, all is well and none of that stuff happens and we have a good time and think that we're badass because we made it out alive, of a sunny day in September. But the reality is the more you do it, the more exposed you are. And it's important, I think, for folks to have a mindset. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on and why I like working with you guys at Response Ready is because you guys understand it. But I've heard other podcast hosts far more well-known in the industry than I am. And I'm not going to name them because I like their podcast and I wouldn't want to drop dimes on them. But their exact words were, man, I don't have the training. I don't know how to use these tools, so I'm just not going to bring them in the backcountry. I've got inReach. I'll hit the panic button and I'm just going to wait for help. That's my best solution. And these guys are experienced, like professional outdoorsmen, right? And I'm like, dude, how can that be your response? I mean, if you sustain a major, hemorrhage, you've got 2 or 3 minutes. There's no one that's ever going to reach you by the time that you're dead, right? You're going to be dead. There's all kinds of injuries that will cost you your life, let alone the subsequent stuff afterwards that you have to worry about, shock and hypothermia. And depending on how far you at, some of those things could kill you before help arrives. So my point being is the mindset of I've got inReach, like, man, inReach is not a lifeline in the fact that it's going to save your life. It's just going to get help started, but it doesn't make help get there faster. So yeah, man, that's what I want to talk to you about today a lot too.
Yeah. And that's something I preach a lot, whether it's, a Stop the Bleed class for a school, active threat for church security, or my backcountry class. Like, mindset's a big thing for that. And so again, just that preparation. What are you doing when you're out there? what's your plan A, B, C, D, and E, and Z? And so, like, I really am thankful for my experience doing wildland because I, developed a lot of good habits doing that. So, the beginning of our backcountry class, it's a little bit of me talking about preparing and just think about the people with you. But I think people overlook some big things. So, like, they all plan for what meals they're going to bring, where they're going to sleep, and maybe I need to bring some extra parts for my bow, and like they all have that down perfectly. But what's the plan if you injure yourself? And I think everybody hopefully should have some type of first aid kit, maybe in their truck, or hopefully carry a smaller IFAC on them. If you don't, like, you're honestly a fool if you're going out into the backcountry and not carrying that stuff. But for me, it starts way before you even leave. So we talk about it a lot in our backcountry class, but it's almost all the annoying stuff your mom would rag on you about that you never wanted to do as a kid. Of where are you going? Who are you hanging out with? When are you going to be home? And as a kid, it's super annoying. Like, I want to go hang out with my friends, and I'm becoming an adult mom. Like, I don't want to deal with this. But it's funny, as you become older and then you have kids yourself, you think about that stuff like, oh man, that, like, I get now why she asked those things. Like, just that, not trying to be in my business, like, go enjoy your day, but like, I just want a little bit of accountability of who you with, where you're going, and where can I find you at what time. So just breaking that down to the basics. If you're going to go on a long, backpacking trip, and even if it's just a day in, day out, sometimes those are the most dangerous. So many people I asked during our class, they bring a little bit of water, a bar, and they think they're just going to, do a light jog or run up to, beehives, a day hike, and just come right back out. Well, then, they break a leg, or weather changes quickly, or whatever reason, right? And the day hike turned into an overnight hike. And, I'm not telling you to pack the kitchen sink on a day hike, but just be thinking about that worst case of what if I don't make it out and I don't have a way to communicate with people? Like, what is my plan then? And then the wildland world, everything we did was trigger points. And I started doing stuff in Northern California with like huge wildland fires, like very aggressive fire behavior. So luckily I had some good mentors of, hey, if we're going to drive into a road, let's look at some maps ahead of time. Do we have another way out? Is this a one-way dead-end road and getting back out if this fire blows up? Hey, let's time it. Another genius thing of, hey, it took 20 minutes to get to this road. It's like a 5-point turn to turn around. Then there are 20 minutes to get back out. And we did that for a couple of years. And, as a younger firefighter, I'm kind of like, oh, that's kind of stupid. Like, that's a lot of extra time. Like, why are these guys doing it? And then setting trigger points is another big thing. So that day on a fire, we were told every day, hey, at 1 o'clock, the Santa Ana winds kick in California. And if you're from that area, you're very familiar with that. Big wind shift, hottest part of the day. Our relative humidity is super low. So increased fire behavior, increased winds, and it changed what is a slow moving flank into the head of that fire. And so we had to immediately get pulled off. Well, it was super helpful to know exactly where our turnaround was, how much time it took to get back. And it was super humbling to get back to our big safety zone and look back where we just were by the time we hit it. And that whole thing was torching off and completely engulfed. So that lesson's always been in my head since the beginning. And I try not to nerd out too much with our backcountry classes, but I want to use that same mindset, right? If I fly to Minnesota, visit my wife's family, and we go to this camp we always go to in Wisconsin, I'm looking at, I have young kids. Where's the closest pediatric hospital? Who's the flight service there? What's the capability of their local fire department? So same thing when I go hunting or backpacking. I want to know, where's my closest hospital? Is there one way in, one way out of this place? And what's my closest, helicopter resource? How is the fire department in that area? Is it on-call volunteer, or is it staffed most of the time? Like, just what is around me? What are my tools, right? And then again, what is my initial plan to get out? My secondary plan to get out? And then all the way to communication. Am I carrying that Garmin inReach? Am I carrying, have I gone through my iPhone? I don't know if a lot of people know that. You can set all of your information, some stuff about you. And when first responders get there in that SOS mode, they might not be able to unlock your phone, but the first thing that pops up is your medical information and some info about you if you are unconscious. So just knowing those good communication tools, know before you go stuff, simple stuff, right? We have members on the SWAT team that are diabetic. So we all think in, fire police, we're going to die rescuing a kid from a fire, or I'm going to be on a roof, making a cut and I'm going to fall through and die, or you're going to get in a gunshot, gun battle and die. But really, it's the silly stuff. I'm going to die because my blood sugar got too low, or I slipped getting off the truck and cracked my head open on the ice. Like, it's always those things we just overlook and those silly things, right, that end up really hurting us or killing us. So it's no different in the backcountry, right? You know, you knock an arrow too soon, making a stalk on an elk, and just those little things that can get you injured and those little decisions, right, can really compound and lead to some major life-threatening injuries or loss of life.
Right. It's just on the pre-planning, right? You know, if you have an in-reach or other communication device, you know, knowing, hey, I don't if I'm not going to be in cell service, what's my communication device? If you're don't inReaches ain't that expensive, right, for the service that they provide, and then now there's other things too. But just having that SOS button, I think, is what still kind of makes inReach a valuable tool, even if you can use your regular cell phone to communicate through Starlink and all that. With everything that's coming out these days, there's not going to be anywhere in the world where you won't have cell phone service before you know it. But even when that happens, just that SOS feature is pretty dang important, right? It's because especially if you're by yourself, the one thing you can do is hit that button. At least help's going to come find you and send your coordinates and all those things. But then also, like you said, man, what's your helicopter resources? And do you have, like a subscription to any of the flight medic services? You know, I have a life flight subscription to our local life flight, and that covers me for like Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And then they also have a network with partner agencies too. So that like if I go over to Montana and maybe life flight can't help me, maybe Three Bears can come and grab me, you know, and that saves me a really expensive helicopter ride. It makes me more apt to call for help with involving a helicopter ride, because maybe you're in a life-threatening situation, but you're just being stuck on stupid and thinking like, man, that helicopter is going to cost me a ton of money. I'm not calling. And people get into that mindset, right? You know, just that rest assured that, hey, I know I can call for life flight and I have the means to communicate with them. Like those two things right there, just the peace of mind that it gives your family, let alone gives you. My wife was very demanding of the life flight subscription. So
yeah,
just because she wants to feel comfortable.
Just the simple stuff that I talk about a lot of, like, you know, let's say me and you are going hunting. I know you, I know your fitness level. We've worked together, but hey, you know, my cousin flew up and they wanted to come with us, or hey, you know, hey, your girlfriend's coming with us. And all of a sudden, hey, we have people in this hunting party, this hiking party we don't know, we haven't really spent as much time with. So just remembering, you know, what is that person's fitness level? Like, hey, our plan is to do a 7-mile loop. Like, can everybody in the party handle that? You know, again, I already mentioned diabetic stuff, but like, do they have bee allergies? Do they need to carry an EpiPen? Do they have Benadryl? Like, I'm a huge trauma and medicine nerd, so I carry a whole damn mobile ER between my trailer, my truck, what I carry in my pack. I carry quite a bit of stuff. But just, I always ask if I'm going to go with somebody and I'm going to be pretty far out remote. I always kind of ask like, hey, does anybody have any medical issues, any allergies, anything we need to know about? So hopefully they can bring some of that own stuff, you know, their own stuff. Do they have asthma? Just kind of knowing that fitness level, medical restrictions, just what's going on with these people in your group before you're going to go far out away from help and from away from cell service.
That's a valuable point, man. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I actually have like 2 incidents. One very recently that, you know, for me that drives that point home is like, I have a buddy that I took deer hunting this year, and he used to not be in good shape. Say that, man. If he's listening, like, he knows how proud of I am of him and what he's done with his life. He's turned his life around health wise. And I used to be a real big dude, but I mean, now he's to the point where he ran a half marathon this year. He's running all the time. So he's like gotten in better shape. And he's like, dude, I can handle the hiking. Like, let's go wherever we need to go to kill deer. So I took him out, and, you know, this was just this last season, right? Just a couple months ago. And we were hunting, and it's just, unfortunately, it was like very pressured public land spot. And I kind of had an end point for the day where I wanted to spend the evening if nothing happened during the day. And there's a couple ways to get there, like a long way and a short way. As the day is going on, you know, I'm like, hey man, like we could try this and try that and, you know, go here, go there. But if we go there, it's going to be, you know, X amount more miles. He's like, no, I feel good, man. Like, let's go, let's try it. And so we hiked our butts off, man. I mean, we ended up totaling a 10-mile day, which for a guy that archery elk hunts, that's nothing. But, you know, for a dude that's never really done a lot of hunting, in my buddy's case, like that's a lot of miles. And I mean, that is a good amount of miles over tough country, some elevation. And to get back to the truck straight line, we had a pretty significant downhill with some obstacles, right? And when we got to our final spot for the evening, which was only about a mile from the truck, but up a really steep hill, lots of downfall and stuff like that, he was hurting bad. And I wasn't being a good hunting buddy, friend, or would have, and if I'd been guiding, would have been a really bad guide, wasn't really listening to him. I was like, dude, he's fine. Like he just hasn't pushed past the pain point before. Like, he'll be all right. And we hiked, man. And then we met a young guy, not dude from the Air Force, who was out there, and he shot a doe and around the corner from him. I was like, hey, let's go see if he needs help. And he's like, dude, I'm hurt. And I'm like, yeah, but want to make sure he doesn't, I'll see if we can help this guy out, just because I'm always trying to be nice to people. And I totally put my buddy's welfare on the back burner, and I felt so bad about it afterwards. So we walked probably add another mile or so to our day. Then we go back to walk down to the truck, man. And I mean, he is just like, he's in pain. And what I didn't realize is that like his feet were in bad shape, right? Like he had okay boots, but his flat feet and his feet were beat to crap and cramping up, blistering. Turns out that they were like bleeding by the time it was all done. And we were walking down the mountain, man, and he had a big puffy coat on. It's cold. I'm like, dude, you should probably take that off. And he's like, no, I just want to get back to the truck. And of course, I'm like, dude, you're stupid. Like, you're gonna sweat your ass off. Take that freaking coat off. But I didn't say it. I'm like, whatever, dude. Like, I'm not gonna argue with you. But we're hiking, man. He ended up sweating out his coat, steaming up his glasses, couldn't see, could barely walk, man. And I mean, it got to the point where I was like, dude, he's a big dude. Like, he might have lost a bunch of weight, but he's still well over 200 pounds. I'm like, I don't know that I can physically drag him over this terrain or buddy carry him down this mountain. Like, it's going to be an extraction. Thankfully, he barely made it back to the truck, but it took us hours to go a mile. I mean, Idaho mountains, man, they're a tough country. But, had he ended up injuring to the point where he couldn't walk, I let him sweat out his puffy. So like, one, I put him in a bad spot because I should have just listened to his body, or just not given him an option to push further than for a first trip. I should have just been like, dude, we're just going to do a few miles a day and not even mention going further. But then I should have listened to him when he said his feet were cramping and took that into mind. But I just have my mind focused on, I don't want to get my buddy a deer. And then if he couldn't have walked any further, he sweat out his one warming layer that could have saved his life. And when it's getting below freezing, that puffy gets sweated out. It's worthless, right? It's a down puffy. So, I mean, that could have been a mistake, right? So it's just such a perfect example of like, not just knowing, but listening, right? Being responsible and making, if you need to tell your buddies, dude, no, we're not doing this, or no, you need to trust me on what clothing you should be wearing right this moment. So if we can't go any further, you're good to go. You're going to stay warm, whatever, right? Like he's too big to fit in any of my puffies. So a million different things when it comes to that. Another time too is just, I got really sick in the backcountry one time, like vomiting, diarrhea. And thankfully I had a medic in our hunting party that had some equipment with him. And if it wasn't for that dude, I would have definitely had to go to the hospital. I mean, just things happen, man. It's not always the obvious.
The little things.
Yeah. Hey, folks, just wanted to take a quick break from the show to talk about my most recent partnership with a good friend of mine, Jake Collier, and his company, One Outdoors. One Outdoors provides a trusted place to purchase outdoor experiences, gear, and services. They aim to positively impact people and the environment by donating 10% of all of their net profits to Restoration Outdoors, a nonprofit, which in turn invests in mental health and conservation. One Outdoors offers trips around the globe, whether you're interested in hunting in Africa or fishing in Alaska, Patagonia, and more. They can customize your outdoor experiences and beyond just hunting and fishing to whitewater rafting. You name it, folks. If you can dream it up in the outdoors, One Outdoors can help make that dream come true. And I'm proud to be partnering with them and consulting on trips and hunts. So if you're interested in booking a trip of a lifetime with One Outdoors, you can reach out to me at thomas@pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com. It's thomas@pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com, or you can contact me directly through Instagram, Facebook, you name it. But One Outdoors, folks, really excited to be working with these guys. So thank you very much for listening to the Pursuing Freedom Outdoors podcast, and we'll get back to the show. So yeah, dude, just kind of on what we were talking about, man, I think the point is like preparation, just properly preparing and having a plan with just a few basic items and knowledge, like really can prevent most of these injuries, right? I mean, it's just like firearm safety, right? How do you not shoot your buddy? You practice good firearms handling and safety. But even though, like, no matter how much we prepare, no matter how much experience we have and what gear we have, bad things can happen regardless, right? Like there's just a lot in the wilderness and in life that's out of our control. We can't control whether or not somebody's going to come attack our kids' school with a firearm, or our church with a firearm, or our workplace with a firearm, or a knife, or drive through a crowd. Just like in the backcountry, we can't control whether or not we get attacked by a bear, whether we, take a bad spill, that our friend takes a bad spill, the weather, things happen, right? I mean, we just lost those two elk hunters out in Colorado this last year to exposure in a bad storm. I mean, things can change quickly and obviously unexpectedly. So, you talk about response ready, preparing people to help themselves during those 3 to 5 minutes before law enforcement shows up. That's in an urban setting. So let's go to the backcountry, man. You just sustained a massive injury crisis situation. You've got, if you're lucky, 30 minutes before help shows up. Maybe hours before help shows up. If it's bad weather, maybe a day before help shows up. So what are a few items, especially for something simple? And I say simple because to us it is, but to most folks it might sound not simple, but like a massive hemorrhage, right? You have 2 to 3 minutes before you die if you sustain a massive hemorrhage, whether you impaled yourself on a stick, taken a fall, you took a fire, got shot by your buddy or another hunter by accident, or knife injury, whatever, massive hemorrhage, you're bleeding bad. What equipment and how can we use that equipment? What equipment do we need? How can we use it to fix that situation and buy ourselves some valuable time?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I think everybody should carry a basic IFAC. You don't
Just
have
tell
to
us
be
what
as
an
nerded.
IFAC is.
Yeah, you don't have to nerd out as much as me and carry like a full trauma bag in your truck, and then again, basically a mobile ER in my RV. But just as a paramedic, I have those knowledge and skills. So it's like, hey, like I would feel really bad if I'm in that area and I could help myself, my friend, even just a random hunter. I can't tell you how many car wrecks I've just rolled up on and helped out on just because I have stuff with me. So just it really stinks when you have that knowledge and training and you don't have the tools right with you. So like I just always try to have that stuff with me. And yeah, the IFAC stands for individual first aid kit. Obviously, kind of primarily came out of the military. A lot of the stuff we do, civilian world now, came from the military, and just a lot of data from wars and death and loss of life, and war and military stuff is horrible. A lot of loss of life. But places like Israel and they're used to dealing with a lot of conflict, a lot of trauma, a lot of good tactical medicine, trauma medicine. So just taking those lessons learned from those horrible events, and now how do we translate them over to that civilian world? So it's nice to see. I'd say Spokane County has always been kind of far behind, but with the push of all the rescue task force stuff we've been doing, we've been really able to take a lot of that tactical medicine, military medicine, and really integrate it into our normal basic trauma and the way we treat people and the responses we do. So that only happened probably 7-8 years ago in our county, so it's still pretty new. And then transferring that over the backcountry, I mean, at the very, very basic level, and you had a personal story about this, everybody should have some type of commercial tourniquet. If you're, did Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts, you can know how to do a primitive tourniquet. That's great. But most of the primitive tourniquets I see, if you look at the study from the Boston Marathon bombing, a lot of belts were used and just shirts that were tied over. But they're missing the windlass aspect of that and a way to secure that down. So if I use my belt, that's great, but I have no way to actually do that last little bit of tightening and actually occlude that artery, especially if it's a lower extremity bleed. Our femoral artery is a large vessel under a large pressure. And so if that thing gets nicked or severed, it takes a lot to really clamp that thing down. A lot of military data shows, 2 tourniquets are needed stacked on top of each other, high and tight, to stop that bleeding. So that
Right.
artery's under pressure.
And just for real quick, not to start to interrupt you, but just for
Yeah.
listeners specifically, right? We're talking about tourniquets. Can you give a layman's term definition of what a tourniquet is and what it's for?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different tourniquets out there, and I don't want to rabbit hole too much, but I'll just first say, because it just came up again in a class yesterday. We did a walkthrough of a school. They had bought a bunch of stuff offline on Amazon, seen a lot of counterfeit tourniquets, stuff from China. So right away, I opened up all their kits. They're all fake tourniquets. The plastic on the windlass can just snap. They're not wound internally through all the way through the band. So just a little plug on the side of, if you are going to buy tourniquets and any trauma gear, make sure it's from a FDA approved, like reputable evidence-based company that sells that stuff. So just a little plug before I start on that. But there's a bunch of different tourniquets out there. There's some that are great. There's some that are terrible. Really just looking at the Committee on Tactical Emergency Casualty Care that meets every year, the recommendation, the CAT tourniquet's still number one. It's got Velcro, it's got a band, it's got a capture device, and then it's got an internal bound web that's tightened by a windlass device. And so for any, adult population that fits on, that's still going to be our good, best bread and butter for the cost, the practicality. Our county, that's what we carry for law enforcement, fire department. We just want uniformity, it to be the same tourniquet. And then our team standard is to put that on in 20 seconds. A lot of people, we didn't really realize this until the Sandy Hook shooting and Uvalde and some of these bigger shootings, unfortunately with, smaller populations, pediatrics, elementary age kids, that the actual back plastic band on the CAT tourniquet's too big to include the artery of a small child. Also, if you open a CAT tourniquet and you have about a fist of bite that you need to actually secure a tourniquet, that's not very big. So I have a lot of bariatric or large patients that are too big for a CAT tourniquet as well. So from there, we have the SWAT T tourniquet, stretch, wrap, and tuck. And so we use that on all small pediatrics, large bariatrics, and it's great for canine because they have kind of that D-shaped leg. So the CAT tourniquet doesn't work well for canine as well. The other one is the soft T wide. We don't really use that in the area. I know some law enforcement carry it. I do like that it's aircraft aluminum, a little bit more durable. I personally think it's a little harder to put on yourself. I think the CAT tourniquet's still the best for self-application. So just for our county, our company, and kind of area, we really just always recommend the CAT tourniquet with the windlass. And then any population that doesn't fit that style of tourniquet, then we recommend the SWAT T for small pediatrics, large bariatrics, a canine, like I mentioned, small pediatrics, and even adults. Actually, people forget too, just the good practice of direct pressure and pressure points. So it's hard to do without showing you. But there's a lot of good you can do, on the brachial artery on a small kid, just underneath their bicep, underneath their arm here, of just holding a thumb on that. Or, if it's a large adult and you need to have your hands free to keep working, you don't knee drop them. I always talk about don't do the WWF people's knee on their groin, but slide that flat part of your shin over the inguinal part of their femoral artery and just hold pressure with your leg while you're working out of your bag or while you're waiting for a tourniquet. You can do a lot with just direct pressure too, and good pressure points while you're trying to figure out a tourniquet or build a tourniquet as well.
Right. And, like just listeners, so you guys all understand. And I think maybe I might just throw a little video component into this, or we'll do it later for you guys on like YouTube. But if you've never heard of a tourniquet for whatever reason, essentially you're looking at some sort of round strap type of situation, right? That you would wrap around a limb that was bleeding, not on the wound, but above the wound. So closer to between the wound and your torso. As Chris said, we like to do them high and tight, like up by your shoulder, up into your groin is where, as close as you can get to those junctions where you want your tourniquet placed. But a round strap, that's why people think like using belts works, or wrapping up a t-shirt real tight. Like, yes, that's forming a tourniquet in a sense, but it's not an effective tourniquet for the reasons that Chris said. A windlass is just the stick that you use to turn and tighten that strap, right? Just a visualization, right? So a strap, you attach a stick to it that tightens it, and that's your tourniquet. Your strap and your windlass forms your tourniquet system. And yeah, maybe we'll do a video. I'll do a little video component after this or something, or just release it. A good reason why you should take a class, but that's a tourniquet, right? And so with a little training, Chris, right, are these easy to put on?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, just to back up a little bit, is when we started first teaching, our courses at some of the archery shops we partner with, or, sharpshoot indoor gun range, we had a ton of people come in over and over. And like, for one, the backcountry class, I'll be honest, wasn't really our focus. In the beginning, it was a lot of the stop the bleed, a lot of the school training. Like, that was where we first started. But overwhelmingly, we just kept having people, hey, do you guys teach like my son backpacks, or my husband hunts, and he, he's cleaning an elk, and he, nicked his artery last year, and he had to hike out a mile with the damn belt held on his leg. So honestly, the backcountry stuff really formed out of a lot of requests from people. So it was a lot of fun, bringing that to, a need that we didn't even really think that was out there. And yeah, like, I have a lot of people come to class, you're like, man, I almost bought a kit online from X big company, but then I'm like, okay, I buy this thing and there's a tourniquet in it, wound packing gauze, chest seals, all these things, right? But I don't know how to use this crap. And like, so I'm going to buy it, throw it in a bag, kind of like you said with that other company. or that podcast, and like, that's great, but I don't know how to use it. So that's probably the most like joy and fun I've had with our business and my passion. When you asked about like, my why of why I like training the general public is like they can, buy a kit from us. We had some people at the ski swap or the snowmobile expo come buy a kit from us. Like, hey, we got a backcountry class in a couple weeks coming up. So they just bought an IFAC. Then they come to our class a couple weeks later and they get to literally use every single thing that was inside of that IFAC. So that's been a really fun thing for our business is like, we're not just an equipment sales business. We're not just, a teaching business. We're kind of that all around preparedness of, whether it's doing a risk assessment for a business or for a school or for a church, or it's, selling kits to the law enforcement, military, whatever, but all the way out to actually teaching now, citizens how to prepare themselves and use those tools. And then just kind of answer your question too a little bit. I always say if you're going to carry one thing out of everything out of an IFAC, it should be some type of commercial tourniquet. For me, it's going to be the cat. If you're going to carry a couple, the cat and the SWAT team, maybe, you're backpacking with a younger kid or somebody the cat's not going to work on. But yeah, that is going to be my bread and butter tool. And there's nothing sadder or more frustrating for me than when you hear about somebody, dying in a school shooting like Columbine, right? Miss teacher with the sign in the window that bled out over a couple hours from a basic extremity wound. Or, Tom, I don't know if you want to share more about your close past coworker that died from a gunshot, to an extremity. And it's just, that kills me because to me, if they just would have had that tourniquet, they just would have had that training, like any extremity wound should be a preventable death, right? Like a tourniquet is such a simple skill. You can put it on so quickly, but if you just don't either have the knowledge to do at least a DIY tourniquet or the tool of having that tourniquet with you, man, it's just, you can lose a life that's just so preventable.
That's 100%, man. And who you're referring to as far as the fella I knew, we weren't close co-workers. We worked at the same department when I first started in law enforcement, and not for privacy reasons, man. I'm not going to list. It's been all over the news. You probably even know what I'm talking about, people listening maybe, but he was hunting with his adult son, very young adult son. And you can get into the weeds on the firearms handling side of things, right? And that's not what we're here to do. I'm not here to talk about why this happened. The fact of the matter is the incident occurred and it could have been, a life could have potentially been saved. I don't know the details of the extremity of the wound, but essentially the son was removing his rifle from the back seat of the pickup while his father stood on the opposite side of the pickup. The gun went off. Again, the firearm safety stuff, I know, but the gun went off. When it discharged, the bullet hit his dad in the leg, and his dad ended up bleeding to death at the trailhead right before help could get there. And his son had to deal with, one, causing the injury, but two, watching his father die. And I guarantee you, with his father's history in law enforcement, that I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't have that thought of, man, I just wish that maybe we had a tourniquet and I showed my son how to use it. And again, not knowing the exact location on his leg, but if that thing was anywhere not in his groin, a tourniquet probably could, like Chris, you said too, but a tourniquet would have been a life-saving tool, right? I love the fact that when you and others say extremity bleeds don't have to be life-threatening. I mean, they are, but they don't have to be a reason to die. They're just so simple to apply a tourniquet and save your own or someone else's life that it is heartbreaking when somebody bleeds to death from an extremity wound in the backcountry or anywhere in the world. Like, it's just, we have the tools, they're available, the training's out there. YouTube can show you how to put them on. You guys have classes. So I'm with you, man. Like, in my experience, from my professional background in the tactical world and law enforcement and being a backcountry hunter and angler and all those things, yes, man, a tourniquet's my go-to as well. Like, there's been times where even when I'm going out, like, hey, dude, we're just going to go fly across the country, man, I will take my tourniquet out of my IFAC and put it in my backpack that I take on me that when we go on the plane, right? Like, I just take a tourniquet with me because why not, dude? What happens? Freaking plane crashes on the runway and somebody freaking sustains a serious bleed. Like, dude, I got a tourniquet right here. There's not a tourniquet on that airplane besides the one I have. I mean, so it's so applicable to your everyday life. And, some other things I think that, and like, let me know what you think too, but it's just familiarizing yourself with and having with you in the backcountry. They're so lightweight, it's stupid not to have them, but chest seals, right?
Yep.
to to treat those chest penetrations, right? Thoracic penetrations, where you can say all the cool medical words, but a penetrating chest wound that can also cause you to die if you don't get taken to a higher level of care in a reasonable amount of time. But it can be, you can buy yourself time with a simple chest seal, and you can purchase commercial ones. Training can teach you how to make makeshift ones. The concept's not that hard. But chest seals, I think, are the second one, and then something for hypothermia. Whether it's those little foil space blankets that come in your IFACs. Am I on the right track with that stuff? It's kind of my go-to big items.
While we're on that topic, I'll just kind of run down what should be in a basic kit. I'll start with, we have our public access stop the bleed kits. That's where we kind of started. And so those are designed, one of those individually bags can go in each classroom. And then a wall mount backpack system with 8 mass casualty, kits in it can go. We recommend mounted next anywhere an AD is, in a school, church, airport, mall, whatever it is, right? I mean, that was kind of supposed to be the national standard 9-10 years ago. And I'm a nerd when we're flying somewhere. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm checking to see if they have any stop the bleed kits at the airport or in with the AD, and I'm always like, bummed if they don't. So like that was supposed to happen. But I think everybody's kind of playing catch up with that. But yeah, just starting with that, the bag's not, too beefy. It's just made to go in a desk or wall mounted. It's not going to be out in the backcountry, but it still has our basic stop the bleed stuff. We decided to put chest seals in our basic kits. If you go on like North American Rescue, Rescue Central, like the bigger national companies, which we actually resell for a lot of them, usually the basic stop the bleed kit does not have a chest seal. We care more about providing the best product for our citizens, and I think putting a chest seal on is a very easy skill. So our base model actually does have a chest seal added. So we use Hyphen. I know Russell, there's some other good ones out there, but the key is you want to have an entry and exit wound. So really it's 2 in 1. So I want to have 2 chest seals. We mostly sell Hyphens. They're occlusive, but they do have non-occlusive channels. So when I first started out, it was literally like a petroleum jelly gauze. And honestly, the wrapper probably worked better for a chest seal than the actual gauze itself. And then we switched to kind of Halo. The thing was almost too big, massive, big circular bandage. Then they had a big plastic valve on it that you could open or close for let air out when you wanted to. And then now I think they've kind of found the sweet spot with these occlusive dressings that have the non-occlusive channels, so that I can let it, it can suck down when I don't want to let outside air into that chest cavity. But then when you expand, it lets that blood, fluid, trapped air in that chest out. And hopefully, you don't have any clotting or anything to block that up. And then you can effectively, slowly let that outside air that's not supposed to be in the pleural space of your chest cavity out. And then your lungs can re-expand and you can have your normal effective breathing process. From there, our public access kits, if it's not like a class, it's more just general public grab off the wall. They just have a 4-6 inch ETD, basically an ACE wrap with a trauma pad attached to it. Our more professional backcountry kits have the Israelis, which now they just call them a compression bandage, but they have the additional pressure bar in. I'm kind of like the old Boy Scout adage of a rock or just something hard, right, that I can put over that point of bleeding. I can add twists into it, whether it's cloth, gauze, ACE wrap, just something that I can add like a X pattern basically and twist over that hard plastic or rock or whatever that hard material is to really put down pressure on that point of bleeding. And then we have wound packing gauze. Some of our kits have 1, some have 2 based on the size, but all of our wound packing gauze is North American Rescue's, the cloth woven. It's not that fine, brittle stuff that breaks apart. Some good feedback from trauma surgeons in the OR and was just having something that'll get picked up. So it does have that filamented blue line down the middle. So anything we pack in a cavity can get picked up on imaging. And then we have a few sets of gloves in there, obviously, for PPE to protect yourself from any blood or fluid that's not yours. Shears, obviously, to remove clothing, expose that wound. And then the cat tourniquet, obviously. If somebody has kids or a school is like a more elementary age or a church, then we do add the SWAT T into those. So that's usually an upgrade if you're going to be around anybody that does have that smaller population. And then, like you said, probably the most overlooked thing in trauma medicine is hypothermia. So when I first started, it used to be the lethal triad. And now it's the lethal diamond, and they just added in hypocalcemia. But the hypothermia piece of that is super important. As your body begins to get cold and you lose core body temperature, your body stops losing its ability to naturally clot its blood. And there's kind of that table where or that cliff that it falls off where your body actually completely stops losing its ability to clot when you get too cold. So our trauma patients, if they're getting too cold, they're going to also stop having their ability to clot. They're going to start to bleed out. And that's why it's kind of that diamond. It just keeps going around the diamond and compounding and getting worse until, unfortunately they pass away. And so hypothermia is the biggest looked over thing, even professionally. I was really bad about it in my career, get a really bad car wreck. We call it trauma naked, cut the person's clothes off, put them on a backboard. Well, that backboard's been sitting mounted outside on the fire truck or ambulance. It's freezing cold. So now direct skin contact on that cold backboard. Put them in the ambulance, crank the heat, put a hot blanket over them. We think we're doing our job. Really, they're losing their heat through that cold backboard that whole time, So and that's something for some national classes I took, I've really added. So, if I'm going to help my buddy and go get help, or it's the active shooter situation, I'm going to leave somebody in a classroom or in a casualty collection point or a treatment area. I want to make sure I'm not just draping a blanket over them. I want to make sure I'm not just cutting clothes and leaving them exposed. I really want to make sure that hypothermia blanket or whatever I'm going to use is underneath them. It's completely wrapped around them and they're not being exposed. And that's super important when we talk about the backcountry world. If I can't effectively get that person out, and I do need to kind of shelter them in place until I go, direct a helicopter in or hike out to get some extra help, I really want to leave them in the best position possible. So if they're unconscious, putting them in that left lateral recovery position. The biggest cause of asphyxiation is honestly people's own tongue, and then it's vomit. So just making sure they're in that good left lateral recovery position, having that blood, vomit, their own tongue, out of the way, let gravity and anatomy help you out. If they are conscious, able to sit them up, then again, getting them out of that exposure, protecting them maybe under a large pine tree, get them completely warm and wrapping them, maybe giving them some of your extra clothes because you're about to go hike your butt off, right? And then another big thing, is talking hypothermia in general. Maybe you don't have this huge hike out, but just some good practices people don't think about. If there's a group of you, somebody falls through the ice or just gets super cold, just kind of those steps we use is, remove them from that environment. Pretty common sense. So I get them out of that cold environment. If they're wet, we all know that compounds hypothermia. So get that wet clothing off of them. If it's not wet, obviously more clothing is good. Let's keep them warm. But if it's wet at all, we need to remove that clothing from them. So get the wet clothing off, get him out of that environment. Maybe have the third person in your party, he hikes way ahead and goes and starts that car and gets that thing super warm, super hot, ready to receive them. Maybe it needs to be turned around, backed out, ready to get out a little quicker. But just preparing that cold person to get into a warm environment and get them out of there as quickly as it can. And then the last thing is a lot of people forget that blood can be just like water. So in the backcountry, I kind of want to, if I'm going to cut clothing and inspect an injury, it's not like a normal call for me where I'm in the back of the ambulance. It's all warm. We're about to get to the hospital where I'm going to cut all your clothes, do a secondary assessment. For me in the backcountry, I want to inspect underneath the clothes, replace the clothes, and I want to keep you warm. If I am going to cut clothes, I only want to do it just to treat that injury and then close that back up and keep you warm again. The caveat's going to be if it's all bloody and blood soaked, that's just like falling in the water, right? That blood can cause you to be hypothermic. So we do actually want to completely cut and remove that blood soaked clothing as well, because that's going to just compound your ability to keep heat in as well.
Dude, I love it, man. And, I think that stuff is just so important for people to hear and think about, right? So, if I had to just give folks a couple of takeaways from this episode, man, is one, prepare yourself, right? Prepare yourself with the communication device, letting people know where you're going to be, and having an extraction plan like a life flight type subscription. The next big takeaways are, all right, everything you were prepared, but it still all the bad stuff happened anyways, and now you're injured, right? So having basic tools like tourniquets, chest seals, space blankets to help with hypothermia. This is like beyond just your average first aid boo-boo stuff that you should have with you as well, right? Then you can, when the cool thing is you come to the backcountry medicine class and you can learn about splinting and everything. And guys, I'm sorry about my big dumb dog out there barking if you can hear her, but yeah, so tourniquet, seals, and then hypothermia stuff. So usually like a space blanket, right? If you're overnight backpacking, you probably have sleeping bags and warm clothes and stuff. But if you're out there in the summer, man, you're out in shorts and a t-shirt, like having that little space blanket and maybe your rain jacket that you had stashed in your backpack and a hoodie, that might be life-saving equipment right there. Having just a few little things with you like that. But those few items and then getting into the rest of it, like maybe SAM splints and making sure we're splinting broken bones and all that stuff. That's beyond this podcast that we could get into, but those few things, man, I think are just so critical. That those are the things that will buy you the hours or more before help can finally get to you. We're in the backcountry, not just relying on that they're going to get to you quickly, because they're not. You're in the backcountry for a reason. You want seclusion, you want isolation, you want pristine wilderness. Well, man, there ain't a hospital down the road from those places, and medics can't get to you in a couple of minutes. So prepare yourself to save your own life, to save your friend's life, your family's life, your kid's life, your mom's life, your dad's life. I think that's the key takeaway to this, man, is you can prepare yourself. And then the final thing to having those items with you is just to get familiar with them enough to use them. Right. And it doesn't take a ton of training, man. Most people walk away from our backcountry medicine classes that you guys, have at Response Ready Medical more than able to put a tourniquet on their friend or themselves, and that's the cool thing is too, and we'll get into that in a second, is the hands-on training at the classes. Take a class, go online, do some research, figure out best practices for using these things. It's not hard. It's not expensive equipment. It doesn't weigh a lot. It doesn't take up a lot of pack space. My kit that I carry from Response Ready is the size of an Algene, right? And maybe you could shrink that down even more, but that's what mine is. And I know you and I and John, your co-owner and founder, we've talked about doing some research and development on more backcountry suited, lightweight, ultra lightweight kits. And that's just to appeal to people that are going to be like, that's just too much. That's just too heavy. I can't carry an extra Nalgene bottle worth of stuff. I'm ultra lightweight backpack hunter. Well, cool, man. Like, you still need to have some stuff, and we're going to try to develop kits that even if it's not what we think is ideal, but it'll get you to have some tools in the backcountry, then that'll be awesome, right? But those things, man, it's not that hard to be prepared. It's not that hard. So I think those are kind of the key takeaways from this particular episode that I want listeners to have. When it comes to training, if you're local to the Pacific Northwest, you should come to Response Ready Medical and go through a backcountry medicine class. Chris, if somebody wanted to educate themselves on that, how would they do that?
Yeah, for sure. And I apologize. I'm going to just real quick to piggyback on your little final thing with what we talked about. I just was thinking about as you were talking, something we talk about more in the active shooter world, but I think it's super important for backcountry. So we talk a lot about mindset. Don't be in the mindset that you need to completely 100% solve that problem of, treating the person and throwing them on your back like Hercules and getting them out. Just have the mindset of, hey, I'm trying to buy my buddy time. I'm trying to buy myself time, right? So we talk about that a lot when we do our active shooter stuff of like, hey, I have 30 patients to deal with and I'm quickly clearing rooms with law enforcement. I'm touching multiple patients. I'm triaging. I'm not going to be treating and carrying them out and being the one driving to the hospital. In the beginning, all I'm doing is just buying that person time, right? Getting them a chance to survive. So I really want people to have that mindset when you start, thinking about going out. When you do help that person or help yourself, again, it's just, I'm buying them time. I might not be able to get them off the mountain right away, but what can I do to at least stabilize them to survive, keep them in the fight, help them a chance to live. Don't feel like you always have to solve the entire problem. Just buy them time until, okay, I put a tourniquet on. Now what do I need to do? Okay, I found somebody to help me, call for help. Now what I need to do? Like just kind of work down that process and have some little wins. And that's going to help you mentally too, with the big picture of, those chaotic incidents, especially when you're not in fire or law enforcement and used to dealing with it all the time. Sorry for my little rabbit hole in that.
No, that's a really good point, man. Just one piece at a time.
Yep. And so as far as courses go, when we first started, it was a lot of fun. We just had a mobile classroom option. We still have that option, and we have some great partners. We used to do a lot up in North Idaho with the archery shop up there. There's a realtor office now that we're going to be teaching some classes at, looking at getting in some other archery shops. Sharpshoot's been awesome. We teach our emergency trauma care at the gun range there. So just any community partners, REI's reached out for us to do some courses there. So just anybody that has to do with, backcountry stuff, shooting, outdoors, like we love just going and doing our mobile classroom. So like if you have a group, we've done snowmobile groups, we've done, people that do 3-gun shooting together, you name it. Like we love coming to your space. If you have a big group you want us to train, that's still an option. And then last May, we actually created finally, it was really cool to start having our brick and mortar location. So we're kitty corner just down right by Spokane Community College. 1414 North Fisk right there on the corner. So now we have a storefront, so you can buy any of the things we've talked about, like, IFACs, medical gear. We have components, we have upgrades, we have quick clot, we have litters. If you and a friend, and actually carry somebody out, a quick litter that you can put underneath somebody, carry them out, a little bit beefier hypothermia blankets, pretty much anything you could think of. And medicine and trauma we can sell out of the storefront, or we have access to every major national brand, international brand. So a lot of our law enforcement professional clients, it might not be hanging on the shelf, but we can cater to any professional accounts as well, and get you anything shipped in too as well. And then what we really focus on, the equipment and all, that's awesome, that's great, but what we really love and where our heart is the classroom and the teaching side. Monthly scheduled out, we have first aid, CPR, AED, first aid. You can come for just the CPR AED portion, or you can stay for the whole thing and do first aid. We have emergency trauma care, which is just a little bit more in-depth version of stop the bleed. Backcountry medicine, again, one of our more popular classes, taking some of the hands-on skills of emergency trauma care, but again, just some of the communication stuff, a little more boo-boo care, splinting, anything that you could encounter out in the backcountry, whether it's preparing, communication issues, all the things for backcountry. And then we teach another popular class that we just started teaching as a babysitter class. So anybody, if you have any kids or people that actually like to do babysitting stuff, we have a whole course on, really CPR first aid, but catering it to childcare. And then from there, we have a 2-day full-on wilderness EMS cert. We have kind of some specialty classes we can teach on request. Again, schools, churches, church security. We have our active threat class that's on request. So kind of our bread and butter and what we specialize in too is those risk assessments. So a school will reach out, a church will reach out, a commercial business will reach out, and we do free risk assessments. So we'll go out, I'll walk a church, talk about, how often there's people in the building. I'll look at their AEDs. I'm on that topic. In the last year of walking around at different locations, I've found 9 AEDs. Either the unit themselves have been completely dead and expired, or the batteries are expired. And I'm not going to name the business, but there was actually a business in town we trained that had a coworker go into cardiac arrest. They went to go use the AED, and it was completely dead and did not work when they tried to shock the person that went down. So just like not having a tourniquet for an arm bleed, like that's super sad, right? Just not giving that person a chance. Not going to say the AED for sure would have saved his life, but man, just that peace of mind and accountability and making sure your equipment, is being checked properly and is going to be there and work when you need it. But yeah, so like the free risk assessments have been awesome. It gets us in the building. We get to meet the staff. We get to see how they do business. And, we're not a governing body. We're not a fire marshal. We're not there representing cops at that point, right? We're just there to give you, hey, here's some standard best practices of how to make this a more secure, hardened location, more of a deterrent. We can provide first aid CPR, classes for your childcare folks. We can provide stop the bleed and active threat for your ushers and for your, security folks, whatever it is, right? Just giving people the stop the bleed kits. We actually do sell and do maintenance on AEDs as well. So we can kind of come in and partner with these businesses and these public locations and just be their overall safety gap for training, making sure equipment's, up to date and the best cutting edge medical equipment that's out there, evidence-based medicine. So it's just really fun to just have somebody come in and you just see that relief on that administrator or building owner, because we just come in and just really take that weight and that liability off of them with our training and with our medical equipment and just kind of our standards behind all that stuff.
That's awesome, man. How do they get in touch with you, or how do they find a scheduled course?
Yeah, so you guys can go to responsereadymedical.com. We have all of our courses built on there monthly. Again, if you want a specialty course or you want us to come out and train you, you can just email us off the website. There's like a little message us page there that goes to our team email. So you can reach out at team@responsereadymedical.com. If you want to reach out to me, any follow-up questions on stuff we talked about, it's just chris@responsereadymedical.com. But yeah, you can sign up for any courses that are listed on there. It's pretty simple. You just find the date and that's going to be at our location that you want to take that training. Also, our website, you can buy any of our kits off there directly, and then follow us on social media. We always have a plug on where our next class is coming up. We're really expanding out, and we do like partnering with some people in North Idaho, Sandpoint. We've had some people, I think, through you that have some interest in Montana. So like,
Yep.
not only do we have our location, we do like to try to go again into some archery shops, gun shops, sports stores, and that way we can touch those other community members that aren't maybe, within an hour or so of Spokane. So we can really cater to anybody that wants to learn or have us come teach a class.
Sweet, man. Yeah. And then also, guys, listeners, if you forget all this or whatever, you can always reach out to me as well. I'll get you in touch with Chris and his coworker, John. And John's going to come on to the podcast at some point and talk about his background and what some of the stuff coming up at Response Ready, I'm sure, and then if right now it's looking like my recovery with the back surgery is going well enough. So this point, I intend to be at the Western Hunt Expo at Salt Lake City next month. So if anybody listening is going to be at the Western Hunt Expo over there in Salt Lake, I'll be walking around and I'll be carrying with me brochures and business cards and some information from Response Ready. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. I'll probably bring my IFAC with me, which is an older one now, but I'll bring it with me just to kind of, be happy to share with anybody that's interested in looking to see what I take in the backcountry with me. I hope that some of the listeners are going to be out there because it'd be real fun to meet some folks face to face and talk to y'all. But I'll be walking around. You'll probably see me wearing some clothing, maybe similar to what Chris has on at some point. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But I'll definitely be there with some business cards, brochures, and at least my IFAC. So Western Hunt Expo in Salt Lake. We'll run into you out there. Email me if you think you're going to be there and you want to meet up. I'd love to try to make it happen. Chris, man. Yeah, dude. So just big show. I think this provides a lot of value to listeners. I'm sure we'll have you back on again. Maybe even if it's just to talk about some of your hunting exploits that you got going on. Key takeaways today, I think was obviously with the gear, the tourniquet and the chest seal, hypothermia and stuff like that. And then preparedness. But I think, just to reiterate it one more time, guys, when you're faced with a critical situation, whether it's in the backcountry or in your community or in your home, one of the first things to do is just take a deep breath, right? Just like when I was telling you, I was standing outside that door on the hostage rescue, take a deep breath, ground yourself back into reality and be ready to make decisions. And hopefully this episode has sparked some thought and planning in your mind so that when it happens, you have a response in your back pocket. You'll be response ready.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tom, and it'd be fun to come back on. And we didn't really get to talk too much about hunting, so I'd love to deep dive a little more in that. Started out pretty honestly terrible at elk hunting and a lot of lessons learned, and every year pick something up, and just finally just over years of putting a lot of miles in, a lot of work in, learning the hard way, kind of finding the sweet spot. So I've been able to kill an elk last 2 years. So I just got my first bull with an archery this year. It was a lot of fun in the Panhandle. And then got pretty fortunate. I think most of our friend group around me didn't get an Idaho tag this year. And so pretty lucky with my good friend and hunting partner that we were able to get an 8A archery tag. So all new country for us, which we're excited about because we spent a lot of time in the Panhandle. So we're really excited to go start scouting in June, July, and learn a whole new area and a new challenge down there. So excited for that.
Awesome, man. That's incredible, dude. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with the new draw system coming out in Idaho, and in some ways, I think is a lot cleaner, as frustrating as it can be, but I think it's a lot better than probably customer service wise to have this draw than the first come, first serve, wait in line for hours on the phone, or try to send your buddy to fishing game for you in the morning. I mean, the lines out the door are crazy for people trying to buy their friends' tags from other states. So hopefully this made it easier, but glad you guys got a tag. Is it your tag or whose tag is it?
Luckily, we were able to do a party tag. So you can apply, I think, up to a party of 4.
That's right, 4, yeah.
So we did a party 2. Our strategy was to go for, archery first. So I think we did 8A and then we did a door shack. And then we didn't want to get too greedy, trying to go for too juicy of a unit, basically reading on the guidelines of like you choose your top, 4 or 5 units. So we were like, hey, what's something realistic? And we were just going to think about doing Panhandle. But we're like, man, we've had a lot of success in the Panhandle and we really want to just try that next unit. And it's pretty cool because where we hunted, down south, the unit above, bordered that. There's a top road that literally cuts the units in half. And so you kind of go into 8A and back into Panhandle. So we've always, looked down on that unit for the last couple of years. And we're like, man, it'd be really fun to go hunt that unit. And we're both, Joe Hilpert's my hunting partner. He owns 509 Wellness. PT and workout gym up in Deer Park, and he's just a beast. He's a little mountain goat. I'm more of the, lifter, heavy lifter, sprinter. So he always kicks my butts in the wood. But it's just fun. Like, that unit looks fun. Doesn't seem like there's accessible roads, and we're gonna have to put some miles in, and we appreciate that type of hunting. Just whatever we can to get away from the pack or other hunters, and put that time in and go find the elk. We're looking forward to that. So
I love it, man. Yeah, well, maybe we'll get you on as we're getting close to the season and just talk about your prep gear, scouting, and everything you got going on, and catch back up with you before the season starts. And that'd be a fun show, man, just to do a little elk hunting prep. Yeah, no, dude, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm excited for you. That's a fun unit. I've spent some time down in that area, not elk hunting, and I've almost wondered if we've walked the same road, because I've walked roads between those units and been like, oh, look down there, and dang, but I have to stay over here even though I'm watching elk over there. But yeah, good deal, man. Well, folks, again, responsereadymedical.com. If you guys have questions, if you've been listening to the show, you probably have already heard that I have an advertisement for Response Ready embedded in the show. So listen all the way through, and you'll get to hear that at some point, whether it's at the end or whatever. But it's awesome, man. I love working with you guys on what you both in our public service careers. It's been an honor working with you and everybody in our local fire service, not just District 9, but definitely District 9. You guys have been just a huge partner in the public safety realm, and an asset to us at the SWAT team. It's always comforting knowing when I've got a D9 guy in the Bearcat with me. Just, I definitely trust our buddies on the team, but it's just nice to have that medic that does it all the time, and that's their sole purpose, is to save lives in the Bearcat when we're going to do some dangerous stuff. And then I love working with you guys at Response Ready. It's so much fun to watch you guys grow this business, and it's humbling to get to be even just a minor part of it and teach some of these classes with you guys. So thanks for all of that, and we'll get you back on the show again, man. But thanks everybody for listening. We've been on for a while, so I'm not going to bore you with all the other updates regarding everything else. We'll get into that in other shows. I think you guys are all caught up anyways, but just remember, check us out at Pursuing Freedom Outdoors on Instagram, Facebook, and please subscribe, and do all the things that podcast hosts ask you to do. It really helps us out. I did used to joke about paying to be a podcaster. Thankfully, we have picked up a couple of sponsors, so I am not making any money yet, but things are getting easier, and that's because of the listeners. If you guys didn't listen to the show, I wouldn't have somebody offer to help me out with the cost of the show. So I'm still probably losing money doing this, but it's getting better. So thank you, listeners. Thank you, sponsors. Thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Until next time, I guess just go do the outdoor thing. Go out there and make it happen. So we'll see you later.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks again. And if this resonates with you, I want to welcome you to the tribe and encourage you to share this podcast with your friends. Hit subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Outdoors. And if you or someone you know has a great story about life or the wilderness, I want to share it. You can shoot me a message on Instagram or email me with all inquiries and questions at thomas@pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com. That's Thomas, THOMAS, at pursuingfreedomoutdoors.com. Until next time, get out there, get after it, and pursue freedom in the outdoors. Before we get started, I want to thank our first partner, Response Ready Medical. Response Ready Medical, bringing our customers the best quality training and equipment for the worst case scenario. Response Ready Medical's vision is to be the leading provider of emergency preparedness solutions across the United States, empowering communities, organizations, and individuals to respond confidently and preserve life during critical moments. Offering same-day certification, all Response Ready Medical classes are instructed by nationally registered and state-licensed firefighter, paramedics, law enforcement officers, and hospital staff. Classes currently being offered by Response Ready Medical include CPR and AED, CPR, AED, and first aid, emergency trauma care, child and babysitting safety, CABS, backcountry medicine, and wilderness first aid. Your premium partner in emergency preparedness, Response Ready Medical.